The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views or positions of the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures or Baylor University. Welcome to episode 6 of In Other Worlds. This is a podcast series presented by the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures at Baylor University. In this series, we want to introduce you to research conducted by our faculty, to some of our programs, and we want to highlight student experiences and successes. Our guest today is Professor Rafael Climent-Espino from the Division of Spanish and Portuguese in the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures. Thank you for agreeing to be on our podcast, Professor Climent-Espino.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here sharing my research.
Good. We've invited Professor Climent-Espino here today to have a conversation with us about his research and teaching related to food and cuisine and the role they play in the transmission of culture. Professor Climent-Espino is the co-editor of the volume of collected essays titled Food, Texts, and Cultures in Latin America and Spain, among other articles and works. We'll just go right into our questions and get things rolling. How about that?
Perfect.
Right? So one question I always like to invite our guests, especially when talking about a particular research idea or topic, is what brought you to the study of food and cuisine? What was that spark that set you on this pathway?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Well, I think that it comes from a personal interest. Since I've been teaching Spanish as a second language for many years, I always have been trying to include culinary practices in Spain as a cultural component.
Sure.
And I realized that students were very engaged about that topic. I'm very happy to have the possibility of dealing with gastronomy within the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I always was interested in bringing more and more food to the classroom. Later on, when I was doing my PhD, I had the possibility of taking a course that it was Food and Culture, taught by Ana Maria Gómez-Bravo, a very important scholar in this field. And I was very surprised that I can join my interest in food within literary studies. Since then, I've been working with food representations within Latin American literature mainly.
Interesting, very interesting. So in reading some of your work, you introduced me to a new term, which makes complete sense, though I had never thought of it. And that term is gastrocriticism. So can you provide us with a brief explanation for the layperson about what gastrocriticism is?
Okay, well, so gastrocriticism is a critical approach that put food and culinary practices as the most important point when we are doing a literary analysis. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about commensality, we are talking about drinking practices, alcohol, any kind of drinking or food system that is within the literary, any literary work, right? So what gastrocriticism does is to analyze food within literary works. It can be poetry, narrative, or even drama. Actually, it was a French scholar, Ronald Taubin, the person that invented or created this term gastrocriticism to study food practices within, if I'm not wrong, French drama of 17th century. And gastrocritics, sometimes, Michael, we do not realize about the amount of food that we find within the literary work. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that I wrote an article, and it's just something that I think is fun. I wrote an article about the role of food in a Brazilian novel. I published that article. The writer read that article, and he wrote me saying, "I didn't realize that there was so much food in my novel." So sometimes we are reading literary texts and we do not realize about the importance of food. And what gastrocriticism is doing is to put in the center of the analysis, of the literary analysis, food and food practices.
Okay, wonderful. So you've written quite extensively about food and culture related to Latin America, in particular your examination of the work of Guatemalan writer Miguel Ángel Asturias, he has very elaborate descriptions of banqueting scenes in his works. So I was curious, and those novels are set within Mayan culture, Guatemala. I was curious to know, are there novels produced by Spanish Peninsular authors that have similar descriptions of banqueting? And I mean, it was very elaborate, and goes on for quite a number of words.
Yes.
So,
well, my expertise is more Latin American literature, Michael, even though I'm from Spain. But yes, definitely, I think the culinary cultures in Spain, and I'm talking in plural, culinary cultures, because I think we have different cultures, not just one, are reflected somehow in our in the Spanish literature. I will mention, I don't know about banquets exactly, but I will mention, for instance, the importance, and this is something that we also study in food studies, the importance of hunger or food scarcity in the Picaresque novel in 17th century Spain, or also the importance of food within Don Quixote. There are very relevant chapters within Don Quixote, with wine, banquets as well. And later on, I can think, if in the Spanish novel of 19th century Spanish novel, we have a great writer, Emilia Pardo Bazán. She's a very interesting case for food studies because she belongs to the aristocracy. She was part of an aristocratic family in Spain at that time, and but she has a very important fictional work, but at the same time, she also wrote 2 cookbooks.
okay.
And it is very interesting because, I wrote an article talking about the intertextual relations between her fictional work and her cookbooks. And what I find is that, when I'm reading her fiction and I find the name of a dish, I go to her cookbooks, and you find extensive information that is going to allow me to do a more accurate, critical literary analysis of her fiction, right?
Fascinating.
And so also, in the 20th century Spanish literature, we have another very important writer, Manuel Vázquez Montalbán. He's very well known in Spain because of his detective fiction. His main detective, Pepe Carvalho. He's a kind of fatty man, that loves eating. So Manuel Vázquez Montalbán, in his literary work, you always find very important scenes with banquets and restaurants where crimes are going on, and
Sure.
and it is very interesting that also Manuel Vázquez Montalbán, this writer, he was also writing, gastronomic criticism, and he even wrote some history of the Spanish cuisine, mainly Catalonia. He was from Barcelona, so but yes, so there are. I mean, food is. I will say that food is present in every period and every genre within the Spanish literature.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose also I could answer that question myself by reading the articles in this book. I know there are several about food and cuisine in Spain.
Exactly. You can find articles from medieval Spanish literature, Golden Age Spanish literature, material culture within the Spanish Golden Age as well. Many articles about food in Cuban fiction, hunger in Brazilian literature. So there are many different.
So, and I see also too that there are two sides to this topic, right? There is the description of food and banqueting, more or less when it's in abundance, but the flip side of that is food scarcity and hunger related to poverty and things. So I hadn't thought about that until you just said that. So that's very interesting. Brings another dimension to the
Of
whole
course,
discussion. So you teach a course titled Food and Culture in Latin America. And what are the big concepts, big ideas that you want your students to leave your course understanding or knowing?
Yeah. Well, that course, I love teaching that course. It is a course that I teach every 2 years. So probably I'm going to teach it next spring 2027. It feels quickly. I'm very happy about that. And we were talking before that other languages are also incorporating these kind of courses, Japanese, Russian, French, and Italian as well.
Yes.
I think, Michael, if I have to say what are the main ideas that I want the students to take from this course, first of all, to understand food as culture, right? Some of them, when they arrive to the course, some of them they think that it's a cooking class. It is not. There is a part of the some classes are taking place we will take place in the kitchen, and we cook and we decide the menu. So that part is fun, and they can bring Hispanic food to the classroom and share with classmates. So it has a very a component that is cooking, right? But on the other hand, we study a lot. I think that one of the main ideas is that they understand that food is culture. When by the end of the course, Michael, I want the students not just to taste dishes, but also that they are able to read dishes. How do we do this? Very, very. I'm gonna go to give you a very specific sample about this. For instance, the importance. We talk a lot about the importance of pork meat in the Hispanic culture. There is no Hispanic country that doesn't have a main dish within its culture that is that incorporates pork meat. Why is that? Well, we know that when the Catholic kings expels Muslim and Jews in 14th century Spain, in order to mark the Christians, people was eating pork meat all the time,
right,
since it is a forbidden meat for Jews Muslims, right? So since that time, pork meat is pretty much in every dish in Spain, and the Spaniards were very worried that people that were coming to the Americas with them were only Christians. Right. So and this is something interesting because it's history of the pork and history of pork meat, right? So Spaniards were worried about bringing as soon as possible porks to the Americas in order to make people eat pork so they wouldn't be Muslim or Jewish, right? And something similar, just to finish, Michael, will happen with wheat and grapes because of the communion. When the Spaniards arrived to the Caribbean, they found that they couldn't grow there neither wheat nor grapes. So one of their main concerns was to find a land where you can grow grapes and wheat. I think that the first vineyard is not that far away from Texas. It's in the border state with Texas, in the state of Coahuila in Mexico, right. And it was founded in 1597, if I'm not wrong, and it's like 1,000 miles from here. So, but now my students, when they go to Latin America and they are eating, pork meat in those dishes, they understand, that why
the history and
in the background of those dishes. So that. I'm just giving you a little sample, right? But
small taste.
But we deal with chocolate, potato, tomato, and many different dishes.
I know you also discuss, for example, in banqueting scenes and things about how food is prepared, but also who is preparing it.
Of course.
The order and things to demonstrate gender roles within the society and hierarchies. Yeah. All of that comes into play with
Social
your
class, yeah, social class,
gastrocriticism.
gastrocriticism, yeah. So something that is very interesting, Michael, and I think that I feel lucky about this because the scholars that we are doing literary studies or cultural studies, uh, we can bring to our analysis history of food, anthropology of food, sociology of food, environmental studies, not just from the humanities but also from sciences. They cannot do that, So I doubt that the historian is gonna use my research to show some aspects, but we can use all those sources from all those different disciplines. And this is because food studies is a real interdisciplinary field, right?
Sure.
So, but of course, you were talking about food and class, food and social class, food and gender. We deal also with food and race, food and ethnicity, where we are talking about pork, who's eating pork, who's not eating pork, food and religion as well. So we deal with many different issues within the class. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So tell us, what is your next project related to food and cuisine?
Yeah.
Something cooking?
Yes, I'm always cooking. Well, I'm now working in two different projects. So I want to mention that I'm going to show this to the camera because I'm part of, since 2019 I belong to a research group in Brazil that is called SAL, on food and literature, sobre alimentos e literaturas in Portuguese. And this is a research group. It's very interesting, very interdisciplinary. And we have projects that we develop through years. And for instance, this one was about the role of food within cinema. So we read, we are making presentations, and then, we work on our papers and we try to make publications, right? So this is called Eating with the Eyes, Food, Culture and Cinema, and it's a very interesting book that it was published in Brazil in 2023.
I suppose you're also watching films.
Yes,
right.
Yeah,
So you can
exactly. So
analyze them.
It is the role of food within different filmmakers from Europe, Latin America, the US as well. That's a project, and then another project. I'm going back to your question. I'm not that we did is we observed that there was a gap in the analysis of food within poetry, right?
Okay.
So usually when people study food, is usually in the narrative works, and we observed that there was a big gap in the analysis of food within poetry. So we did an issue in a journal back in last year about food and poetry. And when I was writing the paper, I wrote about food in Pablo Neruda's, the Chilean writer, poet. So I was doing that research. I realized that there is a big important gap, and there are many different poems dealing with food in the Spanish language. So that's one project. I want to develop that project about to write something bigger, maybe a book about food and poetry in the Hispanic world. And another project that I've been publishing lately is about meat consumption in Latin American literature. Okay. This is a very interesting project. I'm now writing about that. Because, for instance, cannibalism and anthropophagy there are strong topics and strong themes within Brazilian fictions, for instance, So it is animal meat, but also human flesh, right? So it is the consumption of both flesh and meat in Latin American narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds fascinating. So it's slightly different from your previous work, but it's related.
It is always food. Yes.
So we've come to the end of our time today, and I want to thank our guest, Professor Rafael Climent-Espino, for joining us. It's very fascinating. And please join us next month for episode 7 of In Other Worlds, when our guest will be Professor Christian Bratu of the Division of French and Italian. Dr. Bratu is a medievalist and works with medieval chronicles, and I think his episode would also be very, very interesting. So thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.